UN-recognized government in Libya makes major gains in the civil war. Chile announces the shutdown of many embassies around the world. An abundance of stories from around the globe, and a look into the creation of the Austria-Hungarian Empire. This is the world at large, and we are Politics 1001.
Politics 1001.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh.
My name is Ian.
And we are Politics 1001.
Yes, we are.
We are very excited to be here today. We have a lot to talk about. Let's just jump right into it.
So, Josh, tell me all about what's going on in Libya right now. I hear there's a civil war, a lot of unrest. Tell me all about it.
That's right, Ian. So in the Arab Spring in 2011, Muammar Gaddafi was the leader up until that exact date. And the Arab Spring, which was a revolt across the Middle East, including North Africa, the Levant, and many other countries, leaders were overthrown in all these different nations. Some of them were put down, some of the revolts, and some of them were not. In Libya, this was one of the revolts that was successful. Muammar Gaddafi, who was leader in 2011, was assassinated. And the government then proceeded to just kind of exist. There was no exact government. There still isn't today. There's two separate governments. That is what a civil war is, and it's still going on now. The people were protesting Gaddafi because of low standards of living, and they considered him to be a dictator and an overall oppressive regime. So since the overthrow, the country has been embroiled in a civil war with no real stability in the country, which has affected the daily lives of civilians, and it's common to live in the capital, Tripoli, of Libya, and hear bombs and explosions from your outdoor window, which is usually not normal. And so we have fighting between the LNA, which is the militant group under General Khalifa Haftar, who is the quote-unquote rebel who leads the army, that is trying to overthrow the UN-supported government in Tripoli, not only supported by the UN, but also supported by Turkey, led by Fayez al-Sarraj, and that's referred to as the GNA.
Interesting.
Yep, so about a year ago, Haftar was on the verge of taking Tripoli, and he was laying siege to the city. He said it was going to be, and I quote, the final push to take down the city, end the Libyan regime, as he considers it, and get rid of his political opponent al-Sarraj, and maybe arrest him, execute him, exile him, whatever he planned on doing.
Oh boy.
He's never gotten that far, so we don't really know what would have actually happened. But about a year ago, General Haftar was on the verge of taking Tripoli, which is again the capital Libya, and ending the civil war by overthrowing the government. But he was defeated in Gariyan, which is a small city in the southwest of Tripoli. And after his defeat there, the country kind of just went into a stalemate, with the GNA controlling Tripoli and some major places around it, while Haftar controlled actually most of the country, including some major Libyan cities. But recently, the forces of al-Sarraj, about a year later after that stalemate, have been making serious gains and retaking vast swaths of territory, including major LNA holdings in northwestern Syria, which has actually scared Haftar and his allies, including, but not limited to, the UAE, Egypt, Russia, and so on. And it's just becoming a big mess over there, and there's foreign mercenaries on both sides coming into the country, and Turkey is backing the government in Tripoli, and obviously, as I said before, the allies of Haftar there too, and they all invested in it, in the conflict, to have their respective government in power. And so as of now, Egypt has proposed a ceasefire in the country before the war gets any worse, and because they're a little bit scared that al-Sarraj is actually going to win. Because, again, he has taken some major strongholdings on the Libyan coast, which is a country in North Africa, which means all the Mediterranean holdings are now pretty much under the control of al-Sarraj, which is very threatening to Egypt, because if al-Sarraj wins, then they're going to have a stable country, they're going to have a stable country that is very aggressive towards Egypt on their border, because, again, Egypt funded the rebellion.
Oh. So,
naturally, Egypt does not want, or the UAE, or kind of to an extent Israel, does not want the government of al-Sarraj to win the war.
Interesting.
So Egypt proposed a peace deal, which, to summarize, says that all foreign mercenaries have to leave the country, and the fighting has to stop. That's a ceasefire. That's what he's calling for. And this was promptly rejected by the GNA, which is the government of al-Sarraj again, and, well, this is because they're making significant gains, and they're starting to win the war, which they were losing the war a year ago, and then they went to stalemate, so they spent a lot of money on this, and now they're actually doing very well. So,
they don't want peace when they have the upper hand.
They want to keep that momentum going. And
right.
That's kind of what's going on here. The LNA accepted this under Haftar, but naturally because they're losing. And the supporters of Egypt, UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, and Russia, all of them accepted this as well because, again, they all support the LNA. So it's not clear how the fighting is going to end, but it doesn't seem as though the Turkish-backed government in Tripoli will be backing down. And this war has been going on for so long now because, again, Haftar was established as a general in 2015, and he originally was fighting for Tripoli, but he kind of broke away as he became a political rival of al-Sarraj.
Really?
Yeah, so the country is definitely in a lot of turmoil right now. And
for sure.
Yeah, and with large oil reserves, they can definitely be a very successful nation, but right now they're just being exploited by foreign mercenaries. Especially Russia is very, very famous for sending the famous Russian mercenaries to go help Haftar in his siege of Tripoli a year ago.
Wow.
Russia's very known for that.
Tense situation for sure. Now, yes, I see here, Josh, that you want to talk about Chile. Chile has done something pretty interesting, in my opinion. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Chile has announced that it will be shutting down all the embassies around the world by the end of 2020. 5 embassies around the world, not all of them. 5 of them. And
wow.
These ones include, they are Denmark, Syria, Romania, Algeria, and Greece. So this might seem a little random. And
it does.
To an extent it is.
Why do they want to get rid of their embassy in Denmark?
Yeah, so
it sounds bizarre.
Chile doesn't have too many embassies, but according to the Chilean government, they're going to be saving approximately 3 to 4 billion pesos, which is the Chilean currency, in savings in not having to maintain the embassies, pay the staff, etc. And Chile wants to almost reassign that limited money to places like Brussels and Vienna, prominent European cities, and like Brussels is the unofficial capital of the European Union. And so they would move their manpower and resources there so they'd have more influence in these places. Because places like Greece and Algeria, they are trade partners, but really not big ones. Like Greece, for example, is the 19th most trade with country in Europe from a Chilean perspective. So they're really not that helpful. So
right.
In other words, they're going to maintain their relationship, obviously, but economically they're not. It doesn't seem really that worth it, and they don't really think the embassies are relevant or necessary.
Right.
Which is obviously a matter of opinion. Chile can do what they want with their money and their embassies. But that is definitely something that's very interesting because countries usually don't revoke embassies just split decision like that. But it was likely long in the making. But they have till the end of the year to shut down.
Do you know how the other countries where they're withdrawing are reacting?
So naturally, because they're pulling out, it's likely the other countries will too from Chile. But that's not really a guarantee because this was announced yesterday, so we don't really have the country's reactions as of now, but we will know in the future. But usually,
I'm really interested to see how this turns out.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean again that the countries are actually going to cut off ties with each other diplomatically. They're still going to be friends. They're not cutting off. They're not just going to not recognize each other.
Okay.
Like a lot of countries do to other countries in this world. So, if you're worried about a war between Chile and Denmark, you have nothing.
It could happen.
You have nothing to worry about. Denmark.
All right. I was really worried, Josh.
Well, that's good because, actually, you shouldn't be worried about that. So, anyways, I'm glad we discussed that. Other news, and so there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. We're going to cover a few things going on in an international stage. So, first of all, $671 million US, and to convert 675 million euros worth of cocaine was seized in Poland today.
Wow, that's a lot of cocaine.
That's a lot of cocaine. That's almost that's over $500 million. So that's pretty crazy that much cocaine was just in Poland, just chilling there.
Yeah,
and
apparently it was chilling in pineapple pulp, from what I have read.
Yeah, barrels of pineapple pulp, 3 tons of cocaine to be exact.
Wow, very creative method of hiding it.
Yeah, because why would you check the pineapple pulp for the cocaine?
Yeah.
I don't think it goes well together.
It was foolproof.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Some people are getting arrested.
Yeah.
But, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cocaine in Poland now. We know that. But anyway.
Well, it was seized, so a lot less than there could have been.
Yeah. Drug cartels, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Josh, why don't you tell me about there's a lot of turmoil right now in the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
Which we should talk about.
So there was also a semi-violent skirmish in London, but we're going to be focused on the U.S. and Canada because Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has come out and said he supports this defund the police movement. It's starting to become very, very prevalent in the U.S. and Canada. You see major cities around the U.S. actually calling for the defunding or maybe even the destruction of the police department.
Notably Minneapolis, where this all started.
Yeah, city of 30,000 people is trying to get rid of it. The city council has said that they're going to vote on it and get rid of it, but the mayor of the city has been very against that because he likes police.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been a big controversy over that. And a lot of people are saying defunding the police doesn't mean that they're less trained. You're just distributing the money so that everyone can have their own qualifications.
I believe a lot of supporters want to take that money and put it into social programs, which they believe would ultimately reduce crime because it's in the education system and social work.
And they also, again, want to spread out the money. So you kind of make more specialists. Instead of having the police memorize all these laws, you have certain people for every type of law.
That's interesting.
Then again, that would mean that everyone overall just gets a salary cut. This is the argument against it. If people get paid less, they're naturally more prone to corruption, especially for law enforcement. And overall, the police are just going to struggle a lot more to do their job when, they have less money to go around.
Right.
And you've seen defunding movements going across the U.S. This hasn't just started here. Bill de Blasio recently cut $1.6 billion from the New York City Police Department, and he's gotten widespread support for that. So overall, in the U.S. and Canada, the police are looked at kind of as racist by a large portion of the population. And there's a lot of debate whether this is true or not, whether the country is just systemically racist against minorities, or if it's just police. Some police are just jerks. And you see this controversy going back and forth. This is really split along political lines. In the U.S., you have Democrat, Republican. It's Republican, they believe one thing. Democrat, they believe the other.
It's a crazy time to be living in, and a very important debate to be having, I think.
Yeah, because cities are, in fact, burning down. If you look at the pictures of Minneapolis, it's very sad. But
there's a lot of anger going around.
Yeah, people are angry, and they are expressing the constitutional right to protest, which is fine. And the riots are a little bit more controversial, but naturally, every movement has some controversy involved.
Yeah. So to segue, I want to talk about the Chinese-Indian tensions.
Yeah, so China and India have kind of been going through a little bit of a border squabble lately.
A little one.
Sometimes the guards kind of fight each other.
Yeah.
They don't like each other. They're passing the line of actual control, which is abbreviated as the LAC, and there's a lot of not stability going on.
No.
It's not very stable.
Fist fights are breaking out between guards. They're throwing stuff at each other. It's not like shooting fights, but...
No, but China has recently warned that they're going to bring troops to the border if this doesn't stop. So they're trying to make peaceful negotiations. The leaders are meeting like every day to every other day and trying to discuss peace solution because they don't want to fight each other. They both have very strong armies. And according to the one Chinese foreign minister, the Indian army is the best in the world at fighting in high altitudes.
Yeah. To be clear, this border is in the Himalayas. Yeah. In northeast India.
Yeah, and China. Yeah, and the Chinese foreign ministry doesn't think their army can stand up to India in that regard because the Indian troops are just more used to that terrain. And so, moving on with China has also warned its students not to travel abroad in Australia over fear of discrimination and racism. Because for a few things regarding this, but Australia was very open about launching investigations into China regarding the origins of COVID-19. This is similar to countries like Brazil and the United States, which have also questioned the WHO in China, and Australia is kind of jumping on that. And so China has said that we're going to limit our barley and beef imports from Australia because they dare to insult us, and that has definitely made China angry. And the Chinese are telling their students not to go abroad over facing discrimination, and there are a lot of students in Australia. Australia is one of the biggest hosts of foreign Chinese students. Right.
I believe in Australia, China is the number one place or location where tourists come from.
Yeah, so this is definitely not good for Australia in terms of the tourism industry, but I guess it depends on if people actually listen to these warnings or not.
Right.
But either way, discrimination is bad on all forms. But what can you do? We don't really know if that's true or not, if they're going to face discrimination. It seems that China is just very angry at Australia for trying to launch investigations into the origins of coronavirus.
Yeah. Do you think they'll act similarly to other questions who dare to question them?
Most likely, yeah, because the tensions are very high with the U.S., and that definitely has to do with the fact that the U.S. is constantly calling them out and saying that China is just controlling the World Health Organization and that China itself is evil, is an evil empire. And this is all according to the U.S. Foreign Ministry. And that China should just not be dealt with. And they're boycotting Chinese products. They're pressuring European countries to boycott Chinese products, specifically Huawei, which is a big Chinese phone company and technology. So definitely relations are kind of low right now. Not too good between the United States and China, which are the two world superpowers as of today.
Yeah.
All right. So it was a lot of news.
Yeah. I need to go back in time to a historical topic.
Right before the United States and China were fighting each other. Back to, let's say, I don't know, the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Okay.
Let's go around there.
Did somebody say Austria Hungary?
Oh, yeah. I think I heard it in the corner.
Oh.
Yeah. It might be a mouse, but...
So, Josh, tell me about the rise of the Austrian Hungarian Empire.
Yeah, so Austria Hungary was a dual monarchy, constitutional monarchy, in which they had a king of Austria and they had a king of Hungary ruling over the greater empire, and the other ethnic groups within the empire. And it was a constitutional monarchy, and its rise was a little bit unique in that having two different kings ruling your empire is not very well heard of in history, so that's what made it unique. And Austria-Hungary, upon its creation, proceeded to join the Central Powers in World War I and proceeded to lose and fall apart. So, but the creation of Austria-Hungary is a little interesting because it mostly has to do with the fact that before Austria-Hungary, it was just Austria, and it was the Austrian Empire ruled firmly by the Habsburgs, and there wasn't really much Hungarian representation. And the Hungarians were the second largest ethnic group in the empire after ethnic Austrians, which is what created the tensions. And especially built up these tensions after the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, in which Hungarians rose up and are trying to make a revolution for themselves. And the Habsburgs proceeded to brutally put that down, and the Hungarians' autonomy was taken away, and they were ruled by a military dictatorship, essentially. Which, when you rule someone with a military dictatorship, they tend not to be very happy. So that was a major reason. But leading up to that, Austria would normally be able to handle this stuff, as they do very well putting down rebellions. But they were not in a situation because of two major wars before that. The first one was the Austro-Sardinian War, in which the nation suffered heavy casualties in land secession. And that was the bigger reason, because Sardinia teamed up with France to push back the Austrians, and Austrian-Italian holdings were taken away. The Austrians took major casualties, and they lost a lot of money, which was not good for them when Prussia declared war on them a little bit later in 1866, 1 year before the creation of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this is because German nationalism was flaring up, which was important to why the Hungarians rose up. But German nationalism was starting to become very, very prevalent, and they wanted to create the Greater Germany that included the German Confederation, besides Austria. And so they went to war with Austria, and they became the dominant German power. But the Austro-Hungarians took heavy casualties. Over 100,000 soldiers were killed, which 100,000 soldiers dying puts you in a pretty weak position normally. And Austria was no exception to this. And so the Greater Germany was created. Austria Empire was pretty embarrassed. Their military was kind of in the ruins. A lot of their allies were just eaten up by the new German Empire, and so they were very prone. And they didn't really have any allies at this point. Anyone who would help them. And so the Hungarians looked at this and they said, the Germans can make their own empire. Why can't we? And so...
Is that a direct quote?
No. And so they did. They rose up and they demanded through Hungarian nationalism that they get representation in the empire. And the brutal military dictatorship that they were being succumbed to went away. No more of that. And so in 1867, we got the Austria-Hungarian Empire, which created the Kingdom of Hungary within the Austrian Empire, creating a dual monarchy, was a constitutional monarchy, and Vienna, and the reason for this is because the Austrians just didn't have the resources to put down the Hungarians, so they decided to negotiate with them instead of brutally suppress them like they were doing for the last 20 years.
Wow.
So, if you can't brutally suppress, you gotta negotiate.
Yeah.
And so that created the Austria Hungarian Empire, which lasted for only 51 years, but it's a very famous empire, and it's very well known today, mostly because of its contributions to World War I and its constant string of military defeats of World War I that really stretched the German army thin because, well, the Germans had to protect them because they were losing on all fronts. And yeah, they fought alongside the Germans and the Ottoman Empire. But they lost, and they got dissolved into what is now, the modern-day countries before they got eaten by Hitler. But, they had their independence for a few years, a few decades. But anyways, that is kind of the basic history of the creation of the Austria-Hungarian Empire. The Prussian War, the Sardinian War, all of those things. Those are all separate video topics. So if you have any topics you want to suggest to be covered in this podcast, please let us know. DM us on Instagram. We have an Instagram account.
At Politics1001.
Search that up. Maybe. If you don't follow it, please follow it. Hopefully you do. But if not, that's not even an option. I don't even know why I'm giving that as an option.
Yeah.
All right.
We would just think lesser of you.
Yeah, but I don't think less of you guys because I know you're following the account before you're watching this video. But anyways, we got to cover some recent polls.
That's on our Instagram account.
Yeah. So again, if you want to participate in these polls,
that's enough.
You can definitely go. I know. Okay, so let's just get into these polls. We have 3 of them as we do every video. And our first one is, our most recent one, which is, should the West militarily intervene in Hong Kong? Which is an autonomous city in southern China. It technically is a Chinese territory. It's being integrated through the 50-year plan, and it's supposed to be fully integrated in 2048 as a part of China. However, as many of you have seen on the news, people have risen up, millions of people in the city have risen up in riots, and they've been destroying things and attacking the Chinese police because they do not want to be integrated into China. They have things like democracy, internet, and things. A lot of the group and the people there have grown up with Western ideals and overall just standards of living, and they don't want that to go away in China. And so as a Western city, a lot of people think that the West should help them out and protect them, at least until the deal's over. And so 39% of you have said yes. So, yes, why should we intervene in China? What do you think, Ian?
Well, the argument is we have when I say we, I mean the West has a lot of gain from keeping Hong Kong Western because we share similar ideals. So the argument is Hong Kong is a very small city. Can they defend against the massive country like China? So the argument is they need our help. Should we send troops there? And they would say, yes, that's the right thing to do.
Protect our Western allies.
Yep.
And when he says small city, by the way, in comparison to China, it's a very big city compared to any by U.S. standards. There's like 15 million people there.
Relative to China.
To China, yeah. Just clearing that up.
Yeah.
61% of you said no. I don't know why. Why do you think, Ian?
Well, a lot of people see when the West gets involved into countries, they see instability. They see chaos immediately. They see imperialism, and they know the history of imperialism, and they go, hold on, do we really want to invade? China and Hong Kong agreed to this deal. It's fair and square. This is the law. No one is above the law. The West should know this. So it's China's.
Yep, and they're also very scared of a war with China, which is also a nuclear power, and they don't really think it's worth it as, well, it is a city to a lot of people, and it doesn't really have any significance to them. There's no point in sending losing Western lives and bringing Western countries into the possible brink of destruction because of Hong Kong, which speaks the same language as China, and has a very similar culture in regards to, well, cultural values. And so those are the main arguments for military intervention in Hong Kong by the West. But anyways, the next poll is, do you support the riots in the United States? So 36% of you have said yes, that you do support the riots in the United States. So why would you support the riots, Ian?
Well, I think the people who said yes believe that racial tensions are at an all-time high right now, and it's in America. There's been racism since the founding, and we had the civil rights movement in the 60s, yet we still see racism today. And over time, anger builds, and these people believe that the only way to get attention, to make change, is through violent means, whether that be looting, destroying things. Ultimately, they believe that riots are the voice of the unheard.
Yep, and which is a quote from MLK. And they also believe that the federal government tends to blow people off and ignore them if they're just peacefully protesting. They don't really care, and so they're just trying to grab their attention by technically committing crimes to show just how angry they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was 36% of you who argue that. 64% of you have said no, and why is that?
Well, I believe the people who say no, they see these riots as violent and unhelpful. It's not good to be violent. It's not good for your message. It makes people not want to listen to you because you're destroying their property, you're destroying businesses, you're hurting people who had nothing to do with the original act, which was George Floyd's death. They see it as a violation of the law and against the First Amendment right to peaceful protest.
Should be treated as a crime.
Yep.
And they also point to black businesses getting destroyed and looted, and how that isn't really beneficial to the whole Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And they also they don't think it's fair in general to destroy things because of quote unquote racism, which a lot of them do believe that the country itself is not inherently racist. And this systematic racism thing that's going around in the United States and Canada right now, they tend to blow that off and they say it's ridiculous and they don't agree with it.
And our last poll, is white privilege a racist concept? 50% of you guys said yes, while 50% of you guys said no, in one of our most divisive polls yet. I believe the difference was by a measly 3 votes or so. Yeah, so Josh, why do you think people say yes, and why do they say no?
So, people may argue that white privilege is a racist concept because, well, you're saying that people have special rights depending on the race that they are. And a lot of people find this not only ridiculous, but, well, racist. And they do not believe that white people actually do actually have superior abilities to achieve things in society because of their race. And they say that even if they do, the idea of white privilege is still, in fact, racist because you're saying white people are better just because they're white, which is inherently racist in their belief. And and then 50% of you said no also. They do not think this is racist because, well, a lot of them argue that it's true, and something can't be racist if it's actually true, because racism against people in the past is usually based on incorrect stereotypes, and in this case they believe white privilege is real, and so, well, of course it's not racist because it's just the truth. And so white people can get away with certain things that black people can't, and because of that they say no, it's not racist, we just need to address this issue, and we actually need to stop acting like it doesn't exist and denying this very serious problem in Western and global society in general. And so that is the main argument for both sides, and with that
we conclude our podcast.
Yep. So thank you for listening. Feel free to subscribe on YouTube.
Leave a like. Follow us on Instagram. Do whatever you want. Send us an email. Just do whatever you feel is best. Yeah. Thank you for those contributions, Ian. And with that, we're going to wrap up. You guys have a great day. We are Politics 1001, and this was a blast.